He has another question. He says, on one show, Barry was hurt, and Kevin Nash, as Master Blaster Steel, subbed for him. What were Arn's thoughts on Kevin Nash at the time, and had you ever seen any of his work before?
He was just getting started. He was first stage green. But he was a big dude and a funny guy. Kevin's right away, if you're in the locker room with Kevin for 10 minutes, you find out how, entertaining he is. But there's another pushing that 7-foot deal, right?
Yeah.
Big dude, yeah.
Big dude, green, but you know what? He wasn't. He was a guy that obviously took to the business, and figured it out, and had just a unbelievable career. Now he's an ad-free show guy, has a successful podcast, and doing well. And so it's just cool though, as you go through your journey, to see some of these guys as you get to meet them and see where their career takes off. Next up, Edward Jones advisor and wrestling superfan, our buddy Lenny Bakken asked, if future Arn had told 1991 Arn that he only had 6 years left in the business, would you have done anything differently at this point in your career?
I don't think so. I enjoyed working for WCW. It was, the tapings were based, most of them at that time, around Atlanta. That check came every 2 weeks if you worked 1 day, no days, 14 days. Your wife can stabilize your lifestyle when that happens. They can plan your life. If you got in those days, if you had a 3-year contract, whatever that broke down to bi-weekly, you were going to know that 3 years later, you would never miss a beat. And, it was being on that TV opened a lot of doors for you, too. People today, to recognize me 40 years later, most of it is from TBS. Well, it's not the Brainbuster stuff. That's more of a WWF audience. But worldwide, I mean, when they're playing year-old television in the Bahamas, and you go down, and as soon as you sit down, the guy serving drinks comes over and knows who you are. You hadn't been there 5 minutes. That's the way it was. That's the way it was everywhere. It was such a strong television station in those days. They carried the Braves, America's team. They had wrestling. And buddy, everybody, when your face is on there every week, that was the one thing about the TV belt that I figured out. You're going to get 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes of television every week.
Good point.
That's how you get over. It's a lot of work, but what is it called? Q factor?
Yeah.
You want to pump up your Q factor? There you go.
And if anyone can appreciate a wrestler knowing that every 2 weeks that paycheck's going to drop for 3 years consistently, it's an Edward Jones advisor like Lenny Bakken who wants to help you invest that money. So, well said. Were there ever any plans for after wrestling, Arn? Any other plans that at this point, 91, were you thinking long term at all? Did you have any thoughts like, hey, I could see myself being an agent or doing producer work or behind the scenes? What did you think about it this point? Did you think about that?
I never really had a big plan, because when I went to Charlotte in '85, I basically went with my car and my clothes, about $500. And I built everything that we had from scratch, a piece at a time. We lived in that little house I bought for 12 years, sold it. There came the down payment for the much bigger house out on the edge of town. And I guess, Paul, to be honest with you, I never had a B plan or thought, what would I do if I didn't wrestle? Because since 8 years old, it's all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that never changed. But I was smart enough that once we got a home and got it furnished and got a couple of cars so we could function. So if I left in the car, I didn't leave her stranded, driving to a town. And all those things, once you get there, now you start saying, well, let's start putting up some money for the future.
Right.
And you got to be smart. And it's almost a cliche. It's a joke in the wrestling business. The old timers used to say, save your money. Save your money, kid. They knew what they were talking about, because the reality is, if you were out of the business, retired either because you wanted to or because no one wanted to use you or you got hurt, whatever the reason was, there's not much call out in the real world for beat up ex 40-year-old wrestlers. There's just not. And there really wasn't back then. So here we sit, still making a living off the business, if you really want to look at it, 40 years later almost.
Isn't that incredible?
I'm so lucky and so fortunate, so blessed that anybody even wants to talk wrestling with me, that remembers me, that was alive at the time that we were hot. Sometimes I just pinch myself and go, God waved his magic wand over you, buddy, and you didn't get it all, but you got a little slice, and that's all right. That's good enough.
That's good. I'm glad you, and it speaks to your character, how you put that into perspective and how you view that, Arn. I'll tell you that right now. We are so thankful that you are able and willing and do this with us each and every week here on the show, and that you're out there with your fans, meeting them, so gracious. So there you go.